All right. Well, welcome everyone to another episode of Common Sense in an Uncommon World. Mike, we had the State of the Union address last night, where I didn't look it up, but I know the previous record holder was Bill Clinton at about 88, 89 minutes. Do we
You're
have a
wrong.
we have a new record holder?
No, you well, Hector. That's why you have Mike on the show. It's when you need to phone a friend. The previous record holder was, of course, Donald J. Trump last year.
Well,
Um,
not during the State of the Union address.
yeah.
That was a
Oh, well,
different
that's
address.
right. You're right. Technically, it was an address to Congress. All right,
Yes.
you're right. But yes, this one blew Bill Clinton out of the water, and um, I think it may still be going on for all I know. I mean,
We
I was
got
just wondering if
the next day now, and it's still going on right
yeah, it's still
now.
going on. I was wondering if what's her name, the new governor of Virginia, Abigail Spanberger, who did the Democrat response, if she was still up when when the thing was over. It's like, usually when you get to the hour and a half mark, someone says cut, but this one went for almost a full 2 hours.
Well, what about Alex Padilla, who did the Spanish response to the State of the Union address?
Oh, did he really?
I guess he would have done it simultaneously with the Democratic response as opposed to waiting until the Democratic response was done. Because I mean, man, he would have been up there at 2 a.m, giving his address. So
Yeah, it was a stem winder. And I actually want to try and approach the State of the Union thing a little bit different from a communication standpoint, as opposed to strictly a 100% political lens, because I think it is a good teaching lesson about effective communication, whether you agree with the president or not on his issues. It's I think a good teaching moment in learning how communications is done in the political world. And so to me, and it's what I said to you before the thing when we were talking, it's a show. Now, the State of the Union, just to be fair, hasn't been the State of the Union for a good number of years now. It's not, you come forward and say, here's where we are, here's where our country is going, here's what we want to do. It's parrying back and forth with your political enemy. It's gotten more sharper and more edgier as the politics in this country has become more sharper and edgier. And of course, you add in there the X factor, which is Donald Trump, who will say whatever he wants to say, whenever he wants to say it, and it makes for must-see TV. So he had a show last night for 2 hours, basically, and so that's the first way to approach it, and it was, in my opinion, a heck of a show. They put, I mean, he and his people know how to put on a show. It was entertaining. It was at times uplifting. It was at times sarcastic. It was at times, extraordinarily political. But I think for a good period of time, maybe not the full 2 hours, it captured people's attention. And from that perspective, I think it was a good show that they put together. He's mastered what everybody else had done. I mean, I remember back in, I forget, it was 80, 86, or yeah, I think it was 80, 85, President Reagan's State of the Union in DC. It was, I think, a day or two after the Air Florida flight crashed into the Potomac, taken off out of Reagan Airport. And he had someone who was on the plane up in the gallery. And, from there, you would see with all the presidents, whether it was, George W. or Clinton or Barack Obama or Joe Biden, they'd have their people up in the thing. I think Trump and his folks kicked it up another notch in terms of not just recognizing people, but actually doing things with these people that made it even more interesting and entertaining.
And you're right. I thought it was masterful what he did with the gallery. He not only had the USA men's hockey team, he honored the goalie, presented it with the highest civilian honor
Right.
in our country, the Presidential Medal of Freedom. and to see everyone out there just coming off of just an absolutely amazing win, and to see to see them there. I mean, and you could just tell how excited they were to be there, right?
Oh,
And it was just, I mean, you could, I mean, you know, 3,000 miles away, you could feel the excitement jumping out of that television set.
yeah.
And so that was a fantastic thing.
It was genuine. The word I would use for that was genuine. That was genuine patriotism and joy for your country. And, it's kind of ironic because these guys are professionals. I
Yep.
mean, the kid that scored the winning goal plays for the New Jersey Devils. I mean, my friend was cheering for the Canadians, and I said, why? And he said, because all the players I like in the NHL are playing for the Canadians. And it's like, oh, okay. I mean, so these weren't like 1980 where you had literally college kids from Boston University and Wisconsin and everything else. These are professionals, but it still was that element of patriotism and them all working together and celebrating them. I mean, it's a celebration of hard work and the achievement that brought, and it was done really, really well.
And I'm also glad that he mentioned the women's hockey team.
Yeah,
I know that the women's hockey team decided not to come to the State of the Union address. They were invited, but nonetheless, they were mentioned, and I thought that was good on his part. There was no saying, well, I'm celebrating the ones that only decided to show up, but I thought that was good on his part. I mean, the other thing too is, I mean, you had the 100-year-old Korean War veteran that he honored, Royce Williams, who was presented by President Trump with the Medal of Honor.
hmm,
You've got, I mean, the one that also struck me was the Coast Guard Petty Officer, I think Scott Ruskin, who was
yep,
awarded the Legion Merit Medal for
right,
his heroic actions during the Texas floods. I mean, the story that he gave, or the president gave of this. I mean, now mind you, he's a rescue swimmer, but was just being propelled down, and he was credited with saving like 160 lives.
right,
Carrying them out
right.
of these floods and just being able to tell that story, I thought was absolutely just. I mean, it just you could feel that excitement. And I mean, I'm gonna name a couple of more folks that did from the gallery. And mind you, as we're naming these things, I mean, you got to remember that these things are being interspliced within the State of the Union address, which, as you said, makes for a good show, makes for people getting recognized. And you got Dalilah Coleman, the little girl who was hit by an 18-wheeler driven by an illegal immigrant.
Hmm.
Uh,
That's
you've
great.
got Erica Kirk, Charlie Kirk's wife,
Widow.
the widow.
Yeah.
You've got the parents of Sarah Bergstrom, a National Guardsman who was fatally shot in D.C. You
Yeah.
know, she was what's it called, posthumously or something like that, given a Purple Heart. I mean,
Posthumously. Yeah.
yeah, possibly. Sorry. And then the one that I just was shocking, and I remember when seeing this video is and I think was an immigrant from Ukraine, uh,
Yes.
Irina,
Yeah. The
the woman
girl from,
who was murdered in the light rail, right?
right. And
And there was a
Charlotte.
video of her,
Yeah.
yeah, in Charlotte,
Yeah.
and so the parents were there.
Right.
Um, I mean, it's
And
crazy. I mean, even I mean, just they had other folks that were there, and it was just like I said, it was like one gives part of the speech, then another gives a part of speech, and his mastery of being able to use the gallery
mhm.
in that way was just was fantastic.
The thing that struck me was, and I don't mean to make light of this, but the graphic descriptions that he had in explaining this stuff. The blood
Oh
was
yeah,
flowing down the floor of the plane and all this other stuff, and it's like, and and then you see the guy walk out, obviously using a walker
mhm,
and what have you, and I mean, it's a monster of a guy, and you think of what he went through, and all of those things, not so much necessarily the tragic ones like the girl in Charlotte that was killed on the light rail, but the other ones, the veterans and
yeah,
the military folks and just ordinary citizens. Um, those all are the American story. That's
yeah,
how we got to almost 250 years. It's because of people like that who are ordinary people that did extraordinary things. And that's a feel-good moment, regardless of which party you are, or at least it should be. And that goes to some of the other communications things that happened last night that were probably not so good. And to that, I would say to anybody that's listening that happens to be a Democrat, you all got to get your head out of your butt and fire any Democrat communications consultant who is telling you or advising you on how to act. I'm not talking about policy. I'm talking about how you act. First of all, they made a huge mistake by so many of them not showing up. I don't care if you don't like Donald Trump. I didn't like Bill Clinton. I wasn't a fan of Barack Obama. But you still listen and respect the office that they hold. And they're elected officials by their constituency. Their job is to be there. I saw one guy, Congressman Seth Magaziner from Rhode Island. And he on his Facebook, he's like, I won't be at the State of the Union listening to Donald Trump. I'm going to be here helping my fellow Rhode Islanders dig out from the blizzard that we had. And I'm like, dude, you haven't seen a shovel. The only shovel you saw was at the private all white club in Newport that you used to go to with your dad, and the little shovel you used to play in the sand on the beach with. That's the closest thing to a shovel you've ever seen. What are you talking about? And that's, those, and there were a whole bunch of others that didn't show up. And I think that was a huge tactical mistake, number one. And number two, and granted, it's a prop. I freely admit that. But when the president says, how many people here want to stand up for Americans and not against illegal immigrants? And, they sit there. Or when, he introduces or says something and they may not agree with the policy about what he's talking about, but there are people that are examples of it and that have been, affected by it. And they don't stand up, which would be a human and decent thing to do. Yeah. They look terrible. They absolutely look terrible. And it goes past any rhetoric about policy. It's just common courtesy and human decency. And I think he nailed them on that. And the other part, which is more cosmetic, was not just the words, but you watch his face. And he has, this smirking disdain look about that. I think a lot of people were sharing that were watching these people, why won't you stand for this person? I mean, you don't have to agree with the policy, but you don't want to stand for the parents who had their daughter murdered? What's wrong with you? Where's your humanity? That just transcends politics like nobody's business in the world of communications. And it was a horrible, horrible look. And it's perpetrated and not perpetrated, but it's in perpetuity on film. And you can betcha that you'll see some of that film showing up sometime between now and November of 2026.
Well, in two other instances, you got the Dems also stayed seated when the president welcomed the U.S. hockey team.
Yeah,
and he welcomed in. They stayed seated. Everyone else stood up and applause and chant, and they stayed seated.
Yeah, it's just whoever advises them to do that, they should just throw them the heck out. Because I'll tell you what, if you went to any betting parlor anywhere about will Republicans be able to keep control of Congress, before last night, you could the odds were pretty bad. But if they keep acting the way they acted last night, those odds are going to get better.
Because they wore pins, right? They had pins that said, fuck ICE. That was the pins that they wore.
Yeah.
I mean, and it's look, I get it. You're the issue of immigration is hard on some individuals, but I mean, all they're doing is to America is like, look, they are law enforcement officers. They're carrying out a duty. They're carrying out their orders, and to kind of have those pins out there. And at the same time, you had a couple of members trying to shut down the president as he was talking, and it's one of those things. It's not a good look. It's not a good look when you're sitting down, when he's honoring the parents of this young woman who was murdered in North Carolina. And he's got the parents there, and everyone's, I just acknowledging her death. The U.S. hockey team. I mean, who's against hockey winning getting the gold medal in that way. I mean, why stay
It's
seated? And I was, yeah,
it, it,
it was not a good look. Politically, it was not a good way. Messaging, you're right. Whoever's in charge of that comm shop needs to kind of get fired or just do something different. Look, you're allowed to clap when it's need to. If there are some policies or just calling you out, stay quiet, just be respectful, and just sit there and just smile and look straight ahead at the
right.
podium, and you should be fine.
Yeah, it again, what he was able to do is get it past politics to just basic human decency and common sense. And so I think they were kind of big losers in that, in the sense of people looking at that are like, how can you not? How can you not? And then what he did was, and the other thing I saw, which was the one thing and I will freely admit this openly, publicly, I was stunned by his restraint, which you very rarely hear about President Trump. I expected him to do a tap dance on the Supreme Court.
Yeah, same here.
They're sitting right there. The four of them are sitting right there. And what he did on the tariffs was he talked about how he disagreed, thought it was a mistake, but he didn't have that vitriol. He didn't have that, what I would call New York sarcasm or, zinging or things like that, which I thought was great. Because again, the Supreme Court will make rulings, and you may agree or you may disagree, but they're the United States Supreme Court. The courts are a separate branch of our government. And so you have to have that respect for that. And but you can disagree with them, but he didn't, and he had every opportunity. They were right there in the front next to Marco. And he didn't do it. And instead he talked about other ways he was going to make the tariffs work through other levers, which I had no idea what he was talking about. Again, freely admitting this, but other levers that he has available to him to make those things happen. Yeah. I thought that was an amazing amount of restraint, and I was surprised by it and thrilled by it. But then on the flip side, what he did do, which I thought was, again, really a sign of the people that are, I don't want to say coaching, but putting this strategy together, comm strategy together, is when he did go after them, he went after the Democrats in the Congress, which people are used to doing. Joe Biden would go after the Republicans in Congress. Bill Clinton would go after the Republicans. The Republicans would go after Barack Obama all the time. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's usual. That's accepted in this parry that goes back and forth in politics. And when he said, and I think he struck a chord. I really do. When he said, these people are crazy. Yeah. And he used that line. It's like, some people probably, that don't like him were taken aback by that. But I think there are a lot of people out there who may not necessarily like his style or like some of the things that he says or like some of the things that he does, but they looked at it and said, yeah, you're not going to stand up for a hockey team? You're crazy. What's wrong with that? You're not going to stand up for this, these parents that lost their daughter in a horrible, terrible murder because of an illegal immigrant that was here that should never have been here. Yeah, I can not like what happened in Minneapolis and in the killing of those two people, but this daughter, their daughter still got killed. So you can't honor and respect that person by, showing empathy towards that person and clapping for them. Yeah. You're crazy if you can't do that. So I think I mean, honestly, it was quite a show. Quite a show.
There's a couple things that I was surprised about in the State of the Union. One of them dealt with energy and specifically gasoline. When he talked about that there are some states where people are paying $1.99 per gallon of gasoline, right, and that American oil production is up by more than 600,000 barrels a day. I'm looking here at California, and I'll ask you, Mike, right now what gasoline is in your state, but we're near $5 a gallon. Yeah. And so that for me was absolutely shocking. $1.99, and I think he said in Iowa, it is at $1.85 or something like that. Yeah. Mike,
Yeah.
Where is that gasoline? Why don't we have it here? What's the gasoline in your state, Mike?
234.
Oh, good Lord.
234. Yeah.
I mean, can
And,
you
and
imagine?
that's the regular unleaded
Yeah.
pump it yourself kind of thing. Yeah,
Well,
234.
and can you imagine? I just take back California. Can you imagine if we had $2.50 gasoline here for those people coming in from the Inland Empire having to work in Los Angeles, those people in rural California that have to go 40 miles to go see a doctor, or just the parents who take their kids to school to practice and then have to come home and go shopping, go to the
And all
market.
the errands.
Yeah, I mean, just how much money that would save and put more money in the pocket of Californians and other people. I mean, that was one of the areas that I was absolutely shocked,
Mhm.
shocked to during the State of the Union. The
It,
other,
go
sorry,
ahead. No,
I,
please.
the other area that I was completely kind of took me aback was that in less than a year, this president has been able to secure the border. What Joe Biden had talked about for 4 years. He said, hey, I need Congress. I can't do this by myself. Congress needs to do this. And it was 4 years of coming up with excuses. And yet Trump was able to do this in a matter of months.
Mm-hmm.
And the line that that Donald Trump gave, which I thought was very powerful, was the only thing standing between Americans and a wide open border right now is President Donald J. Trump and the Republicans in Congress.
Right.
And that was his quote that he gave, pretty close to the quote that he gave them. And it shows. I mean, it's in months he closed down the border, something that, like I noted, Biden had come up with excuses for 4 years.
Well, he didn't want the point was he didn't want to close. His policy was not to close the border because it would alienate a certain part of his Democratic Party base. And so he came up with excuses, blamed Congress, whatever. And Trump was just the opposite. His base was, wanted to see the border closed, wanted to have no problem with legal immigration. So that's, and you're right. Because remember, there was Trump 1, there was 45. And it was a tough struggle in the beginning from 2017, 2018, 2019 to get the fence built, the border done, and everything else. There were difficulties in that. This one happened very quickly. They clearly went in with a plan on day one, and there was no ramp up or waiting for takeoff. They were ready to go, and they went out on day one and knew exactly what they needed to do, both administratively, legally, from a budgetary standpoint. And right there, that's again, one of those things that he promised and he delivered on.
Yeah, I'm gonna go in another direction here. One of the other items that I was quite surprised here, the State of the Union also had to do with crime. And I looked at CBS did fact check this, and when he was talking, he said that new reports show that the murder rate across the nation's biggest cities had gone down to its lowest level since the 1900s, marking it the biggest one-year drop in recorded history. And like I said, CBS News had fact checked it and said, no, it is true. It is the biggest one-year drop. And part of it, I know the president's crediting his stance on immigration. The other thing that he's kind of crediting with some of this thing is because he's been able to secure the border, fentanyl coming across the border was down about 60% in just 1 year.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that was the other very striking thing, so it goes back into this idea of law and order, where he also talked about Washington, D.C. is now safer today than it was before he sent in the National Guard. You've got other cities where he's done the similar thing. And so, those are things that impact us all directly, right? Crime itself, the fentanyl. At the same time, I mean, good Lord, $1.99 per gallon of gasoline. I mean, these are all things that affect us. Now, it's going to take a while for these policies to kick in. The feeling well economically, that takes months, that times takes years. But I mean, at least in some of the ways that he presented the State of the Union address, it is going in kind of in the right direction there. I know he still says he has a lot more work to do, and it's not done yet. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens in the next couple of months.
But I want to take your $1.99 gas and take it down one more level, because yes, the one we all see with the naked eyes when we pull into the pump, and if you're paying 4 and change in California, you're not going as far as you could, or as far as you could someplace else. And it's less money that you have in your pocket. But the other part about that is the manufacturing in this country and the building of things in this country. And when you can bring energy prices down to a reasonable level so that you can be competitive with foreign countries, then the manufacturing is going to take off and you're going to see those jobs created. You're going to see things made in America again, the way they used to be. And so there is that ripple effect throughout the economy that is just not at the gas pump. It's at the manufacturing. It's at, throughout the economy, the energy thing is so important. And, I mean, it's someone was telling me today, the Northeast got whacked with a nor'easter last weekend. And, the nor'easter, everybody sees the snow, 2 feet of snow and everything else. But a nor'easter also brings steady winds of 40 to 60 miles an hour. It's like a hurricane. It's like a snow hurricane. And, someone was telling me they have the video somewhere of like the windmills, the energy windmills in Rhode Island off of Block Island and in off of Cape Cod that they put these things in, which absolutely disrupted the fishing industry in those places because, the oil that's poured into that, the environmental thing of the currents and everything else, it disturbs the bedding, where the fish breed and everything else, so that, the fishing industry has really taken a hit with it. These things never moved during the thing. It was like, someone was saying it's like that. So, it's kind of like one of those things where let's just get real. The purpose of energy is to create opportunity. It's to create opportunity for you to go further. It's create opportunity to have more money in your pocket to spend the way you need to for your family. It's the opportunity to build things in America. And, when he goes after energy the way he's going after it, it's going to help the economy. And yes, it's going to take time. The one thing I did like, and I know it's stupid, but, hey, it's me. I did like the fact that he pointed out that, and he pointed to the Secretary of Agriculture, Brooke Rollins, and, said, hey, we came in and a dozen eggs was literally $10 a dozen. And now it's back down. I think it's $1.99 or something like that. Unless of course you're California eggs and, then it's probably $6 because, they have to have whatever, they have to be free range or something like that. Right.
They've got to get free range. They've got to have medical insurance. They've got to, they've got also have to have, I'm sure, driver's insurance for whatever reason. And so, yeah, it's just,
and they have the chickens run on a treadmill to make sure the eggs are solid too. So, it's a little more expensive in California. I get it. When you have a SAT score of 950 for governor, that's what happens.
Oh, good Lord. We'll get into that a little bit.
But so that is a big difference. I mean, that is a big difference. Now, granted, price of other stuff has gone up, and that stuff needs to come down, but and it will take time. But I think, again, looking at it from a comm standpoint, there were specific and tangible things that could be pointed to that shows there's a difference. There are specific factual statistics, like you mentioned on the fentanyl, like you mentioned about the border, that are verifiable, that can paint the picture. There was the stories of people in the galleries that paint the picture. There's the people that came in to celebrate, the American achievement of today that might have been similar to something 50 or 100 years ago as we celebrate, America 250 this year. And then there was the rhetoric that he turned on the right people as opposed to the wrong people. He turned the harsh political rhetoric on the politicians, not necessarily on the court. And I thought that was a significant communication step that took place last night.
Well, you'll be proud. I was taking notes and during the State of the Union, and I've got to, there were also a lot of new policies that he introduced. So during the State of the Union address, President Trump proposed several new policies, including the ratepayer protection, which is about ensuring Americans' energy bills don't rise because of new data centers, and having the tech industry be able to create their own type of energy. In addition, he also promoted, and there were a lot of members. I think everyone stood up on this one. Was banning stock trading by members of Congress, and he asked them to pass the Stop Insider Tradings Act. He also gave a job, and I'm glad it wasn't back to Marco Rubio because I think he's already gotten a lot of jobs. This one is going to be led by Vice President J.D. Vance, the war on fraud, and he talked about California and some of its fraud that it's dealing with. And it's interesting because today the FBI raided the home of the
Yeah.
superintendent of LAUSD.
Yeah.
And so, so looking at the war on fraud, he also talked about during the State of the Union address a new Dalilah law barring any state from granting commercial driver's licenses to illegal immigrants. And two other things that he talked about. One of them is urging Congress to pass the Safe America Act, a bill with a nationwide voter ID requiring proof of citizenship in order to register to vote. Mm-hmm. And then the last one that, at least the one that I noted, I'm sure there's probably a few more, is encouraging Congress to make sure that repeat offenders are behind bars and they stay there. And encourage them, say, create legislation on it, make it more difficult for them to get out of prison or out of jail, and let's make let's make the United States safer. And so those were some of the areas that he introduced new policies during the State of the Union address.
Well, and just because of my background on it, I love the Save America Act because, and he pointed it out, and I saw it the other day and was just on the floor laughing. I saw it on Facebook. This girl in New York City, before the blizzard hits, goes down to the Department of Sanitation in New York and says, "Hey, I heard Mayor Mandami on the radio saying if you want to help, you could pay $30 an hour." And they said, "Yeah, you need 2 forms of ID. You have to have your Social Security card to be able to go shovel snow. But hey, that's too much to ask if you want to cast your vote or to register to vote." It was like the communist mayor of New York City, and I'm sure he wouldn't argue with me saying he's a communist mayor. He knows he's a communist mayor, requires photo ID, 2 forms of government ID, and your Social Security card to be able to go shovel snow. But it doesn't apply, for some of these guys like Chuck Schumer when you say you need that to be able to register to vote. And again, it's one of those things that people scratch their head and say, what's that all about? That makes no sense whatsoever. And especially when they try and make it racial in nature, that, because you're poor, because you're Black, you don't have ID. I mean, it just, again, when they do stuff like that, it just defies the common sense. And so, it puts them at a disadvantage. And I think you saw that. So he did have some new policy things. They're not going to be easy to get through with the thin margin in the House. But I think the other thing we saw, just to tell people what to look for, is a strategy for the 2026 off-year elections. And the strategy is to talk about real solutions and the difference that they've made. You may not like some of those solutions, but you can't argue with the results, as opposed to the other side, which the most basic decency and common sense ideas are automatically thrown away because of who they come from. And if you're not going to stand up for a family that lost their loved one because it doesn't match the narrative that you have on that particular issue, then there's something wrong with you. And I think that will be something you'll see going forward in a lot of these races as we get further into 2026.
Yep. And you're right, Mike. And I think, like I said, it was a good show of the gallery. It was a lot, some interesting policies got introduced. The surprising part with, for myself, the energy and gasoline, immigration, the crime. And I think overall, he did a lot better job than I thought he was going to do. And one of the things that I always enjoy about the State of the Union address, and it is regardless of who's in office, is it's their opportunity to talk well about the government or talk well about the United States. Mm-hmm. And because I got asked this by a reporter yesterday that said, the president said we're in this golden era of the United States. And do you agree that we're in this golden era of the United States? And it kind of struck me in that particular question. And I'm like, I'd like to believe that we're always in a golden era in the United States. I'd like to believe that even when things are tough, we're always trying to put a good step forward. Even when our backs are up against the wall, when things are difficult, when we've had, you know, racial unrest here in the United States or slavery or any other things, World War One or two or any other situation that people are working and striving to make a better country. People are striving to for freedom, for democracy, for making lives better for individuals, no matter who's in the White House. And so, for me, that is one thing that I really enjoy of the State of the Union addresses. I know that a lot of it comes with the show itself, but I'd like to believe, that we are entering that we continue to be in a great era for this country. I mean, we're about to celebrate our 250th birthday. We've got the Olympics that are now going to be coming into Los Angeles, coming in a couple years. We have the World Cup that's coming into the United States, and so there's a lot of things to be proud of. There's a lot of things to be happy. I mean, seeing those young faces of these hockey players, and also our women's team, and all of our Olympic athletes as they competed, and just and wore the red, white, and blue. I think all that just makes me, I don't know, makes me proud to be an American, and it makes me proud of, like I said, no matter who's in office, to see that State of the Union address where we can talk about great things that we are doing and the greatness of this country and wanting to help individuals. And so that's the part that I really enjoy of the State of the Union addresses.
No, I agree with you. It was no apologies. That's the part I liked.
Yeah.
It seemed like over the last 4 or 5 years, it was apologizing for this. We didn't do this right, or we've got to do this right. And it's like, you know what? Nobody's going to get everything right all the time. The fact that we've been able to get this far as a country with everything that we've been through is truly amazing, and God's blessing. And it's not going to get any easier as you go along. But the Stop Apology Tour is over, in case anybody missed it last night. And it doesn't mean we do everything right. It doesn't mean we do everything 100% of the way it should be done. But there are points in time, and I've been doing politics for a long time, and it really has transcended from something where you had respect for the other side, and not everything they said was wrong, and you pulled out something of theirs, they pulled out something of yours, and you got something done. That's what I grew up with. That's how I was, as a Republican, able to do well in a Democrat area like New England and Rhode Island and places. But that's a thing of the past right now. It really is. And I think people last night saw a lot of good things about America. Some tragic things about America that have happened to people that should never have happened. It was I would say a great presentation. It was something that I think was worth the 250th, is probably the way I would put it, because there are a lot of other stories of people that aren't there now, of people that did things in the past that got us this far. And we saw some people last night that are keeping us going, and they're ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And it's always great to see that.
Well, let's leave it at that, Mike, for the State of the Union recap. So thank you, everyone, for taking a listen to Hector and Mike talk about the State of the Union address. Take care, Mike.
Take care, Hector. I got to go study my SATs.